My boss thought firing me in front of the entire department would humiliate me. He even smiled while he did it. What he didn't realize was that my phone had already been recording the entire meeting, and within a few weeks, that same recording would cost him his job. My name is Emily Carter, and for almost 4 years I worked as a senior data analyst at a marketing analytics firm in downtown Chicago called Brightwell Strategies. From the outside, Brightwell looked like one of those sleek corporate success stories. Glass office tower, polished branding, big-name retail clients. Inside, it was the kind of place where people quietly stayed late most nights, juggling impossible deadlines and trying not to attract the wrong kind of attention from leadership. I didn't mind the work. Data analytics can be stressful, but I liked solving problems, turning messy marketing data into something that actually helped clients make decisions. Over the years, I had built a reputation for being dependable. Clients trusted my reports, my coworkers asked for my help when projects got complicated, and my old manager, Karen Liu, was the kind of boss who actually defended her team. If a client was angry, Karen handled it. If someone deserved credit, she made sure leadership heard about it. For 3 years, things ran smoothly. Then, Karen left the company. And everything changed. Our new department manager arrived 2 weeks later. His name was Derek Halston. The first time I met him, he walked into the conference room wearing an expensive suit and introduced himself by talking about his MBA from Northwestern. He spoke for almost 10 minutes about transforming the analytics culture before asking a single person on the team what they actually worked on. It was the kind of speech that sounds impressive in theory. But when you've worked in corporate long enough, you can usually tell the difference between confidence and performance. Derek felt like performance. At first, I assumed he was just trying to establish authority. But the first red flag came faster than I expected. One of our biggest clients was a national retail chain called Northbridge Outfitters. They spent millions each year on digital advertising, and our team managed their marketing data. A few weeks after Derek joined, I finished building a forecasting model that analyzed 3 years of Northbridge sales data to predict when their holiday campaigns would spike. It was complicated work, late nights, multiple revisions, but the results were solid. The model showed that Northbridge was overspending on ads in early November and missing the real surge window 2 weeks later. If they adjusted their budget, they could save hundreds of thousands of dollars. We scheduled an internal meeting to review the model before presenting it to the client. I walked everyone through the data, explained the patterns, answered questions. The room seemed impressed. Then Derek stood up. "Exactly the type of forward-thinking analytics strategy I've been pushing," he said confidently. He started talking about how important predictive modeling was for modern marketing teams, how leadership had hired him specifically to push the department in this direction. For several minutes, he spoke like the model had been his idea. He never mentioned my name once, not even casually. After the meeting, one of my coworkers leaned over and whispered, "Did he just take credit for your entire project?" I forced a small smile. "Looks like it." At the time, I told myself it probably wouldn't become a pattern. I was wrong. Over the next few months, Derek's management style became very clear. When projects succeeded, he framed them as results of his leadership. When something went wrong, he looked for someone else to blame, usually me. One afternoon, he called me into his office. He closed the door and held up a printed report. "This data set was outdated," he said. I glanced at the document. "I didn't send that report," I replied. "You approved and forwarded it from your account." He leaned back in his chair. "We're not going to focus on technicalities," he said. Technicalities, in a data analytics company. It was the first time I realized Derek didn't care about accuracy. He cared about control. And once he decided someone was a problem, the narrative started shifting around them. Soon after that conversation, I noticed something else. I started getting removed from meetings with clients I had worked with for years. Instead, Derek began bringing a newer analyst named Ryan into those calls. Ryan had joined the company 6 months earlier, and just by coincidence, he used to work with Derek. Then the promotion was announced. The company was creating a new role, lead analytics manager. The position would oversee several large accounts, including Northbridge. Multiple coworkers encouraged me to apply. "You're basically already doing that job," one of them told me. Even Karen, my old manager, texted me when she heard about the opening. "You'd be perfect for that role," she wrote. So I applied. My performance reviews were strong. My client relationships were solid. And I had already led several major analytics projects. The first interview went well, the second one too. But the final panel interview included Derek. Halfway through, he asked a strange question. "Can you explain why several of your reports required revisions over the past quarter?" I blinked. "That's normal for analytics work," I explained calmly. "Models improve as new data comes in." He nodded slowly. "Some executives have expressed concerns about consistency." The statement didn't make sense. No one had ever raised that issue before. But in a panel interview, accusing your boss of lying isn't exactly a winning strategy. 2 weeks later, the promotion went to Ryan, the same Ryan who had known Derek for years. That was when the atmosphere at work really changed. Ryan began presenting reports built from my data in leadership meetings, without mentioning where the analysis came from. Derek started making subtle comments during team discussions. "Some analysts struggle with keeping up with the department's pace," or "We need people who can handle the pressure of high-level clients." He never said my name, but everyone in the room knew who he meant. One afternoon, a coworker quietly pulled me aside in the break room. "Just a heads up," she said. "About what?" "Derek's been telling leadership you're difficult to manage." The words hit harder than I expected. Because for 4 years I had built a reputation as someone reliable. Now it felt like that reputation was slowly being rewritten. That was when I started documenting everything. Emails, Slack messages, meeting notes. At first it was just a habit, something to protect myself in case conversations got twisted later. But after one meeting, where Derek blamed me for a delay, I had proof wasn't my fault. I started doing something else. I began recording certain meetings, not every meeting. Only the ones where I had a bad feeling something might get misrepresented later. At the time, I didn't think those recordings would ever matter. They did, more than I could have imagined. The breaking point came on a Friday afternoon. At 3:45 p.m., Derek sent a sudden calendar invite to the entire analytics department. Subject line, "Quick Team Alignment Meeting." When I walked into the conference room, something felt wrong immediately. Ryan was sitting near Derek with a small, confident smile. Several coworkers avoided eye contact. Derek stood at the front of the room holding a folder. "Thanks for joining on short notice," he began. Then he looked directly at me. "Emily, we need to discuss some serious concerns about your recent performance." My stomach tightened. He started listing accusations, missed expectations, communication issues, client dissatisfaction. Almost none of it was true. But the worst part wasn't the accusations. It was that he was doing this in front of the entire department. I glanced around the room. People looked uncomfortable. But no one said anything. Then Derek closed the folder. "Effective immediately," he said calmly. "Your employment with Brightwell Strategies is terminated." For a moment, the room went completely silent. Ryan leaned back in his chair like he had been expecting this moment all along. What Derek didn't know was that my phone had been recording from the moment I sat down. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I simply nodded, packed my laptop, and walked out of the room. But inside, I felt strangely calm. Because Derek had just made a huge mistake. He had publicly accused me of performance issues that contradicted my written reviews. And he had fired me in front of witnesses, without HR present, without documentation, and with my phone recording every word. On Monday morning, I contacted HR. I kept my tone calm and professional. "I have some concerns about how my termination was handled," I told them, "and I have documentation, including a recording of the meeting." There was a long pause. Then the HR representative said, "Could you come in this afternoon?" The meeting lasted almost 3 hours. They listened to the recording, every minute of it. The expressions on their faces slowly changed as the meeting went on. They reviewed my past performance evaluations. They compared Derek's accusations with internal records. Finally, one of them asked a simple question. Did HR approve this termination beforehand? No, I said. Derek told the team it was a leadership decision. The two HR representatives exchanged a glance, and in that moment I realized Derek had just created a very big problem for himself. Within a week, the company launched a formal investigation into Derek's management practices. Multiple employees were interviewed, emails were reviewed, client feedback was examined. And slowly a pattern started to appear. Credit stealing, blame shifting, favoritism, questionable hiring decisions. Apparently, I wasn't the only person who had experienced it. I was just the first one who had proof. About a month later, I received another call from HR. Derek was no longer with the company. They didn't explain exactly what happened, but the message was clear. His career at Brightwell was over. Ryan quietly transferred to another department not long after. As for me, HR offered something surprising. They asked if I would consider returning to the company, with a formal apology, but by that point, I had already accepted another offer. One of Brightwell's former clients, Northbridge Outfitters, had hired me as a senior analytics consultant. During my interview, the hiring manager said something that made me smile. We heard you were the analyst who built the forecasting model that saved us money. Apparently, clients notice more than managers think. Looking back now, the strangest part isn't that Derek fired me in front of everyone. It's that he believed no one would question it. Office politics can hide bad leadership for a while, but eventually the truth catches up, especially when someone presses record. And if that experience taught me anything, it's this. Sometimes the person trying to humiliate you is actually just documenting their own downfall.